Hi everyone, how's it going? This is Richard from TheTeckCast. Got a good one for you today. Today we're going over hardware. It's the beginning of a hardware video series that I'm going to be doing, leading up to how to build your own computer. Today we're going to start out with a very crucial component, the CPU. Now everybody knows that most choices for CPUs, if you are a computer builder, there's only really two companies to go with, Intel and AMD. If you get into phones and stuff, there's more like Qualcomm. They have the Snapdragon processor for smartphones. But today we're focusing on desktop processors, which Intel and AMD rule the roost. Now among those two, Intel is kicking AMD's butt. AMD's had some setbacks. They've had to shrink their company down a little bit and basically pull out of the competition with Intel a little bit. But, personally, I still use AMDs. I like them. And we're going to go over some reasons why. First, we're going to start with Intel, the mega giant. Basic thing you need to know about Intel is their chips are just more powerful. They're more efficient. They handle data better. They use less power. All in all, an extremely good chip that has a lot of power in it. AMD, however, is more along the lines of more bang for your buck kind of deal. AMD's chips are not quite as powerful, but a heck of a lot cheaper for what you get. I saw a benchmark one time that showed that as far as like performance per dollar, the AMD chip versus the Intel chip, the AMD chip had a 2.5 ratio compared to the Intel chip, which was more expensive. Basically saying you got 2.5 better performance per dollar through the AMD over the Intel. Although the Intel was more powerful overall, its price reflected that. So AMD's is more for budget builders, or if you're building computers in a mass quantity, like if for some reason I ever get more help with the TheTeckCast, if it grows, I need more people, I'm probably going to build stuff with AMD, because AMD also does technically handle graphical processing a little better than Intel. So a lot of people use them for gaming. Also, things AMDs do better is overclocking. You can get some crazy clock speeds with AMDs if you're an overclocker. Intel's you can, but not quite as much. So if you overclock the AMDs, they kick Intel's butt. But then you got to invest in, a cooling system, and so you don't melt your computer. All right, now let's get into the specifics of the two different brands. We're going to start out with the Intel, and they have a few sets of chips out. They have the Pentium, the Celeron, the i3, the i5, and the i7. Pentium and Celeron, in my opinion, are outdated and should no longer be used, but that's how they make. That's their cheaper line of chips. If you buy a cheap Dell, a cheap HP, I'm pretty sure will do it too, but especially Dell's, they've got Celeron or Pentium processors. Remember the old Pentium 4s from, 7 years ago? Yeah, it's basically the same thing. A little bit of a revamp, but I won't ever touch them. If I'm going to go Intel, I'm going i3, i5, i7. If you look at benchmarks on the line, AMDs are always compared against the i-series. You never see them compared against Celerons and Pentiums because there's no competition. But they're great for making cheap computers if you're an Intel fanboy. But I'm an AMD fanboy, but cheaper AMDs are more powerful than cheaper Intels. So starting off with the i3s. I've got it sorted by lowest price. This is the lowest price for an i3. $120. Now, when looking at chips nowadays, you really can't compare just the clock speed. Like this one has a 3.0. Nah, that's not what I did. This one has like a 3.0 gigahertz. 3.0 gigahertz Intel is not the same speed as a 3.1 AMD. It just doesn't work that way anymore. That's the internal clock speed for this, but the clock speed can be different on each manufacturer. So how the clock reads it is different too. It's all kinds of screwed up. But you go from your i3s of 2100s all the way down to the i3 2125 for $160. This one appears to be a big one, and so does this one. Now, you're going to see things like Sandy Bridge and Ivy Bridge. Those are the architectures of the microprocessors, and we'll get into that in a little bit. There's basically how the i3s work. They're all dual cores. i5s are all quad cores, starting at 179, going all the way to 224. Really good, strong guys, though. If you do buy these and you are an overclocker, make sure to get the K, because those are the unlocked ones, so you can overclock them. But these also, you will notice, have graphics built into them, specifically Ivy bridges. Sandy bridges, not so much. You'll find a couple, but not so much. Like this is a Sandy bridge right here with graphics built, with a GPU built in alongside the CPU. And you don't have to buy a standalone card. Now we're moving on to the i7s. These are all quad cores. There's a couple of 6 cores in here, but you're going from 280 to, wow, $569. That's a beast of one. That's their 6-core processor, i7. Now, I'm pretty sure I've also got it up here. It's their i7 Extreme Editions. These are some serious stuff. $1,000 a pop, but they will kick anything else's butt. 6 cores at amazing clock speeds for Intel. They will just tear through anything. Never tried one, but that'd be sweet if I could actually afford it. Now we're moving on to the bridges a little bit more, the architectures. Sandy Bridge was the last generation of the i-series, which these two are Sandy Bridges. But you want the Ivy bridges for the latest ones. They're typically built a little faster, a little bit more efficient. The newer generations come, otherwise why would you put out a new generation? And of course Ivy bridges have graphics built in. Now of course Intel graphics are never as good as AMD's, because AMD has its own line of graphics cards. That's their thing. But you still get a decent graphics GPU for doing video games and just all kinds of stuff. You should still be able to play DVDs or Blu-rays if you watch them on your computer, or stream Netflix. You should be able to handle it fine with this chip and the GPU in it. You wouldn't have to buy a dedicated GPU or graphics card. Okay, the first people to actually come out with this idea, though, was AMD, to put them both on the same chip. Leading off with that, we're going to go to AMD's APU lineup. APUs, crap, what does that stand for? I don't remember. But it was their lineup of CPU plus GPU. Now, when these first came out with the Liano architecture, I didn't think much of them because they're relatively weak. They're not very powerful. But at the time, I wasn't looking for that. But now, going back, and if I want to do cheap builds, I'm thinking about this. I'm like, these are cheap chips that are decent enough, and they have great graphics built in. Vis-a-vis this, a Liano. Generation 1. $40 for a dual core. Now, while these aren't quite comparable to the i3s, the lowest price guys, you get a lot more for your money out of this. $40, you can have a chip and go in and be able to do most of today's tasks. The only thing I really wouldn't do with it is probably video gaming or any kind of video encoding, because it would take forever. It's a dual core. That clock speed is different than 2.5 on the Intel. We talked about that. But this is their cheapo chip. Next up down the line, you'll see a Richland. That's the 3rd generation. Richland is much better than Liano as far as efficiency goes. And you spend $5 more, and you can get something a heck of a lot better than this A4 3300. The A4 4000 it'll kick its butt for $5. So this is probably what I would go with my next build. Although it doesn't appear to have the graphics built in, which is what concerns me. This is the only Richland chip out right now for the APU series. Hopefully when new ones come out, they will have graphics built in as well. But at the moment, I don't see it, so I probably wouldn't buy that. But I would spend another $10 over this for this bad boy. A4 5300. It uses the Trinity architecture. That's the second generation. Not quite as efficient as Richland, but still gets the point across. Its clock speed is almost a full gig over the cheapo up here, which is great for AMD. 3.4 gigahertz. That's amazing. And if you have a turbo slot on your computer motherboard, you can use a 3.6. DirectX 11 graphic AMD Radeon HD 7480. That kicks some butt as a GPU. Next up is more Liano stuff, but we're moving into the A6 series, which this is a triple core. That's like the only one. And then we move into the A6 Trinity, but this one's unlocked, so you can jack up the overclocking on it and get the clock speeds higher. Have a 3.6. It's just a dual core as well, but with a fairly decent graphics. It's better than the one up here. Then once again, that's only another $15 over the previous one. Then we got the A6 for the Liano. We move up to our first quad core. Quite a bit more powerful. Once again, it's the same price, but I'd still probably go with this guy just because he's a Trinity and it's unlocked. And it's a full gigahertz faster. And not to mention power consumption's like 35 lower. But then we get to this guy. There's only another $5 over this guy. It's an unlocked 2.7, a little slow, quad core. It's a Liano, and I was hoping to find the Trinity of the next one. It's an A6. Apparently there isn't. Well, there's the Trinity A6, but it's a dual core. I was hoping it'd be a quad core. More Lianos, more Lianos. Okay, here's the next Trinity. 3.2. That's a great graphics. It's quad core, $104 compared to the last guy I was looking at. $70, $30. Those are the A8s. Then you've got, geez, the A10s. Crazy. Top level A series stuff. $130. 3.8. Graphics is a 7670. And it's unlocked. So you can, overclock it. A great little chip. But now we're going to move on to their FX series. Their FX series was supposed to be their top-end model processors, one of which I have in my computer, but it failed to live up to expectations because there's just so many cores. More or less. They start out with the quad cores, but then by the time you get down here, you're into 6 cores and 8 cores. Actually, this is the exact guy I have right here, the FX 8120 Zembenzi, 3.1 gigahertz. 125 watt, so I had to have a pretty good power supply, and it cost me almost $200 whenever I bought it, but not to come down. Zambini is the first generation, and Vishera is the second generation. I'm not going to go over it in depth like I did with the APUs, because there's no graphics built into these, but that's great. I do a lot of multitasking, playing. While I was waiting for a video to encode, I had a very, very heavy physics engine running on a game, and it started to overheat the processor. But the computer didn't slow down. It would have if it melted, but, Some customer choice awards. That's got a promo that ends in 2 days. This guy's out of stock, surprisingly. Here's the new guys that I would really love to have. The 8350 Vishera starts at a 4.0 gigahertz, and not to mention it's unlocked. You get the black ones for unlocking the FX series. Or most AMDs, you get the black edition. 8-core processor. That thing will... that'd be so sweet. But that's basically where we're at with these. Once again, this is about as powerful as some of the i5s, which, if you remember correctly, our cheapest i5 was 180. Our most expensive was 224. This one's 200. So it can beat some of the lower-end i5s around its price, but you're still going to get more bang for your buck than like the biggest i5s, and maybe even the cheapest i7, but that's a little iffy. I want this for my computer, but and it still uses the same socket type, so I can really use it. It's sweet. But AMD's kind of going down a more and more efficient path all the time, but Intel's got such a huge lead, they probably won't catch up anytime soon. I plan on using at some point for a really, really powerful like chewing computer to do video encoding. I'm probably going to have that it's set aside strictly for video encoding. I'm probably going to have an Intel in it. I would love to have an i7 in it. But I'm probably going to go with an i5 because it's more than good enough. It'll sit off to the side. I want a big-ass AMD for my computer for multitasking. And for smaller computers that sometime I'm going to build all desktop workstations. Definitely the APU series from AMD. Don't need as much multitasking power, and they're good, and they do graphics fine, so you'll be able to do any of the higher resolutions on monitors. So that's how I plan to use chips. Like I said, I like AMD more, but I am going to concede the fact that Intel's just faster and more powerful, and I'm going to use that for my heavy load tasks. Anyway, that's about all I got for you guys today. We'll go over a build with one of these at some point, but we need to go down the line of finding motherboards and all that other good stuff, finding RAM. But that concludes CPUs, which in my personal opinion is one of the most fun parts about building a new computer, is because you can tell people what kind of chip you got in it. Once again, AMDs aren't really much to brag about, but when you're saying you're rocking an 8-core processor, people are like, oh my gosh, if they don't know the difference between Intel and AMD. If they do, they laugh at you. I'll see you guys all next time. Don't forget to like, comment, like us on Facebook, sure. Comment and subscribe, all that good stuff. See you guys all next time for the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.